Welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere with your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere. Today I have Marelle van Beerschoten, and she has her agency, Digital Shapers, and we're going to hear hopefully all about that today and other things because she's involved in other initiatives as well. I've known Marelle really for, a couple of years. We pitched some work together, and I was delighted to be on her podcast as well, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. That was a lot of fun about a year ago or so. So, Marelle, welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere. Would you please share with me and the others, what do you do and why do you do what you do?
Yes, thank you, Chris. Okay, so let me just tell you, I've been an entrepreneur to start with. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 10 years now, so, longer than I thought. And I started out 10 years ago with a company in mobile apps. And I won't go into that too much, but as I moved onwards, I got fascinated by what was happening in the world of technologies, especially 10 years ago here in the Netherlands. We weren't thinking and talking about it so much as we are right now. And what I got fascinated about it was how people interact with it and how we are, what our mindset is towards it. So whether or not we are able to grasp full potential of those new technologies coming to market. And that's actually why I started Digital Shapers, about 5 years ago now. And our aim is to help organizations going through digital transformation, whether or not they call it like that. And then especially help the people within organizations to open up their mindset and grow their skill set to be able to grasp that potential of technology. So to be able to use it for the benefit of the company. In the end, of course, for a company to become more profitable and not only to survive, but just to succeed in today's world and tomorrow's world. But we might get into that, as I find that very interesting as well, is that it's not a purpose by itself to be able to work with that technology and to implement that technology. But I believe more and more we are starting to notice that we're using that for the purpose of the company, of the organization, which is much more of a societal value. It's a reason for being. And technology can help you succeed in that in that societal value as well. So that's at least the field in which I'm working. Yeah, that's what's inspiring me on a daily basis.
And why is this so important to you? Because you seem very passionate. You're out there. You're working with lots of organizations. You're helping, communities of people move forward with their thinking and mindset and skill set. What's the passion behind all this?
Well, I believe. I'm just excited for everything that's changing and coming and that's new every day. And I just being an entrepreneur is something I like to do on a daily basis. Like not only to my own company, but to think about new combinations and new opportunities on a daily basis with anyone. And I think, especially in this world of technology, it's full of opportunities. So for me, it's the right place to be. Yeah. But then, at the same time, I notice that many of inhabitants in the Netherlands, for example, because that's mostly my playing field, and people who are, especially our working population, is not always as positive towards technology and changes that come from it. And there's often still feeling of fear. There's insecurity. What's exactly going to happen? But what is it going to mean for themselves in their jobs and for their future job and perspectives. And that feeling, I like to change that around because I'd like to give people confidence and help them grasp However, things are uncertain. Grasp, well, at least the things that they can do for themselves to grow, well, in mindset and skill set again, to be able to have a fulfilling role and fulfilling job in today and in the future, and that's what I see happening. And I see people struggle with it. I see leaders struggle with it. And I think there's different levels to work on, and I like to work on both. And
it's meaningful. This is a meaningful human issue or condition, as technologies, exponential technologies, automation, are affecting, how people live and how people work and how people interact. That can be very scary. So, looping to Digital Shapers itself, which is the agency that you've created to help solve these, dilemmas and help people move forward. Can you describe a bit how Digital Shapers helps these people and these leaders,
Definitely.
exploit or deal with or survive?
Yeah, definitely. So we work on different levels. So we have a program for leaders. And that's where we inspire much more. So we help them see what's outside. I think that's something you do yourself as well with some of the clients, that you've mentioned also before, and I know that you're working with. So you show them what's happening around them, because often they don't always have that. They're working on their own tasks within their own organization. They don't always have the privilege and time to see what's happening around. So I try to get that inspiration from very nearby. So you don't always have to go to Silicon Valley or China. In your province, department, whatever, you also see what's happening. And then we try to experiment with new behavior. It can be new ways of working and new organizational models. It can be anything, but trying to form strategy by doing. So I'd like to inspire and then try something and then see does it work or not. And then if not, let's find another way. And if it does, then how do we scale it up? And so strategy by doing, that's really something I aim to do and I like to do with leaders. And then a next thing what we do is often when those leaders say, okay, or managers say we're going to run certain programs and we've set a vision for the future, then obviously you have to go through a certain transformation or a certain change or growth. You can name growth as well, the whole organization. And that's where we develop programs to help people move through that change. And we try to make it as tangible as possible and also as personalized as possible. So we help with questions for people just on the work floor, as we say in Dutch. They what is this going to mean? Why is this important? Why have our leaders? Why have they got this vision? And what the plans are? Why is it important for the company to be profitable and successful in the future? And then of course, if that question is answered, then it has to do with the person itself, and what is it going to happen for me, and or what is it going to mean for me, and what's going to happen and what's needed for me. And so we really we go through those questions, we think about it, and then we develop programs on making people more aware of what's happening at first, trying to create desire with us to be part of that change. And then help them build capabilities. And so that's where we run programs for larger groups of employees within companies. And we do that through gamification, because that helps a lot, for example, with creating awareness. But we've also developed some academies. We do some coaching on different ways of working. And it's very much at the moment more data-driven working. Design thinking, you've been working with that as well. Agile working, though we're not experts necessarily in that field, but we're really trying to help companies move from that through that change from leaders to employees. And in the company.
And, obviously I'm a fan of Digital Shapers and the work that you're doing. What I really like about your methodology, if you will, or your approach is you start with leadership, because oftentimes, conversations that I've been involved in is some leadership team has decided they want to do some digital transformation and they want everyone else to do it. Okay, we need to be digital, so let's maybe hire a CDO and go transform some stuff, but don't bother me. And when I'm asked about digital strategies, I really am adamant. Do not make a digital strategy. Digitize your business strategy, and it's a different sort of mindset. So, how do you get into that head of the leaders to really? Because for me, that's the hardest part. If you can get the leadership to become part of that journey and live that and need that and desire that really authentically, then everything, I guess the chance of success can be so much greater. So how do you do that? Because, executives are really experts at operational excellence and not changing and keeping things very rigid. And, it's, but I think that's where all the magic is happening.
Yeah. So I think it starts with listening. And there's a discussion, a serious discussion, and not by trying to convince somebody of something, just listening to each other and talking through challenges or problems that those leaders are facing at the moment. And I, of course, I don't always know the answer at the by the start, but they don't. And say definitely, it's true. They're experts in their field, and I'm never or no way a better expert than they are. So the only thing that I bring in is, in the end, my accumulated look or perspective towards the world and to what's happening, and my accumulated experience of what works and what doesn't work in other and sometimes similar organizations. But then at the same time, every organization is different. And so I really just try to dig into it, listen very well, and then try to co-create and decide together on what we might think might help in a certain area or dealing with a certain challenge. And then work with that.
Yeah, I love this starting with listening, because what I've discovered, and I'm curious what your opinion is there is no definition of what even the word digital means. And when people say, okay, well, we need to go digital or have a digital transformation or something, it's, first thing I ask is, well, what do you mean by that? So I'm curious what, if people talk about digital mindset, for example, how do you describe that? What is a digital mindset for you?
Yeah, so I recognize what you're saying, and with some people, I have to really get into a discussion and tell them that we're not going to help them just with their IT systems.
Right.
And I think that at least is something that to me, it is not.
Mm-hmm. So yay, amen. I support that.
Yeah. And so I think of it of digital in a broader way, and so I'd say it's, on the one hand, it's about digitization, about doing things digital in a digital way, or with digital processes that before you did in a physical way, for example, or analog. But what it is also is different ways of working. So for example, companies that have moved to e-commerce start selling differently. So they need to create and use different habits within their daily working practices. And so different ways of working as well. And a different skill set. So at once, for example, those in that same example, people had to start working with online e-commerce systems. And so different software, for example, much more software, much more applications. So you need practical skills to work with those applications, but also more abstract skills or competences in the field of, let's say, problem solving in different ways, for example, or more creative thinking. So that's where we're moving towards mindset. And in that sense, I also think about, and that's something I still want to add to that, to digital, is also making use of those possibilities and opportunities that grow from the base of new technology.
I think it's definitely technology enabled. So you can't sort of do it without technology, I suppose. But yeah, technology is never the answer, I think. And a simplistic way that I like to say it is, digitizing your business strategy means, connecting with customers in digital ways with propositions and products that are digital, and that can be very broad as well. And then the impact of the overall operating model can be profound, because it depends on where they're coming from and where they're going to. That can be, fundamental. Go ahead.
Add to that, I was having this discussion with a innovation director last week, because she's joining me on a project on one of our clients' projects, and we've defined the field of digital and data in this company as important fields to improve on and to develop expertise in. And then she's coming in with the expertise of innovation. And then obviously she was asking me the question, like, where does my job start and ends? And then especially compared to yours, when you're dealing with data and digital. And I wonder what you think, but those are, in the end, it's about, it doesn't mean how you define it, but it means, but I think what's important is that you define it, and then that people within one organization at least know very well what you're talking about, and how you relate to each other. And in the end, I believe that both shouldn't necessarily be, well, different initiatives, but good storytelling is important in this one, and being clear about how you're taking which initiatives and who's working on it and what's expected from people.
Oh, I'm thinking, can you even separate by those definitions digital and innovation? Because if you're going from, call it, analog to digital, then you will have to innovate a lot on many, many, many dimensions of your business in order to pull that off. So if it was me, I wouldn't try to make a start and a stop. I would say, well, let's be together and go that way. Now, interesting. Sometimes people think digital mindset equals agile. I'm not sure if it's that black and white. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think agile is just one way of working, and it's an important one, but there's different ones. Yeah.
I think I don't think there's any silver bullet that way. But you have written a sort of an industry white paper on AI and the need for, I guess, society, looking at the Netherlands to upskill itself. You touched on that as being a motivator and, one of the things you do, but can you share a few words around that paper and what the key, I guess, outcome of that is? And we can put a link to that think tank in the show notes as well. But it looked really interesting. I haven't had a chance to read it. It's also in Dutch, I think. But it's. Can you share why you did that and what the outcome was?
Definitely. So you're right. You're mentioning that it's a paper, it's a research being done by a think tank, and I'm part of that think tank. And what we aim to do with that think tank is to, it's a bit broader than my own working field, and the one that you're mentioning has everything to do with my working field, but that think tank aims to put, societal or political issues, even economical challenges. We try to dig into that and to create, let's say, an agenda separate from political agenda that's being run here. So we try to do really thorough research and then publish on it. And so about 2 years ago, we did research on the state of artificial intelligence in the Netherlands. And we tried to define it by, for example, looking into what was happening in terms of governmental policies and subsidies and support systems area, but also what the status was of academic research in the area, and how many professors, for example, we have at universities. But also what companies are doing and how much they invest in AI, artificial intelligence, within their companies. And fourthly, fourth area was how many startups we have in the Netherlands based on artificial intelligence. And then we did a little bit of a comparison to other countries that are far ahead. And then obviously the United States and China jump out, but also we looked at, for example, the Scandinavian countries and England. And France, for example, where Macron had just said that he was going to invest about 2 billion euros in artificial intelligence in the country. And that was at that time quite bold, as not many European countries were doing that. So one of our conclusions was that there is no no countrywide strategy on artificial intelligence. Well, other countries have that, and those who do are more successful.
Right.
And companies were not investing enough. In terms of startups, we're not doing so bad. In terms of academic research, we're also doing quite well. But that is at the same time it is at risk, because we see that so many countries around us that are heavily investing in it are also buying our talent, for example.
Oh yeah.
And that's even more interesting, I think, to follow to follow the race that's going on artificial intelligence between China and the States. It's very interesting to follow that. Yeah. Anyways, we did research. We also tried to explain the basics of artificial intelligence. We sent out this publication to not only politicians, but also quite some professionals and C-level professionals from the large Dutch companies. And we also tried to make it easy for them to understand what artificial intelligence is about. And then in 2 years, I think we've really, and not only we as a think tank with this publication, but we as a country have really made big progress in this field. And about a year later, a national strategy was launched.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and some big initiatives were started also between in coalitions of large corporates. Kickstart AI is one other thing. There's a AI coalition that you can join as a company that do research and try to share best case practices, etc. So that's a very nice one.
Lovely. Well, I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well. Is that something that because your customers are corporates essentially, is AI or starting the thinking and the journey towards AI? Is that something that you can help them work around and work with? Is that something that you guys can directly contribute to?
Definitely, and we get that question a lot, and perhaps to just set it clear, we work for corporates, but we also work a lot for companies that are just a bit smaller than corporates, and a lot of family-owned companies as well in the Netherlands. Okay. And we notice that they sometimes even need our expertise a bit more than the corporates do. So for corporates, we help them a lot with employee activation programs. The other ones, we also help them on the strategic part. And then they often ask us a question like, what should we do with AI? How important is it? If we start with a chatbot, for example, does it make sense? And I think this remains a very interesting field to discuss, because many companies have started to set the first steps, but I was just having this discussion with my employees, my team last week, and ask them, do you think that even the largest companies in the Netherlands right now, that they're actually far ahead with AI? Like, do you actually think that they've reached a level that we can be proud of or not? Like, what do you think? And I think we're still behind. I'm quite sure about it. So that's my opinion. But
behind, like the US and China, or yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
definitely.
yeah.
And I look at that as Europe also.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this is this discussion has a very, very great momentum right now also in media, because you see that there's much more pressure starting and put on those large companies like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Alibaba, and etc. And about what they do with their data, etc. And that's and we can talk, and you hear me speeding up, but I can talk about this for so long, and I don't think we have enough time for this. But I think one of the reasons why it's so important for us also as a country, as Europe, as a organization to invest in artificial intelligence is because we highly value our own principles, norms, and values on regarding data and data privacy. And if we want to live with that values and value system, then we should also, in a way, develop our own systems, because otherwise we start using the systems of companies from overseas, and then we will, probably have to use their value systems.
Yeah.
And well, that's
it's definitely evolving in complex landscape, because it's those big brands, corporates that you mentioned that actually have the scale and the need and the data sets in order to really accelerate the capabilities in AI. The average corporate probably doesn't have the data sets or maybe even the need to do actually primary research. So then they're going to be buying sort of AI solutions from other firms. And then, the Americans and the Chinese are ahead of the game as far as, providing B2B solutions based on AI. So it's fascinating to see it. I'm in another initiative around conversational AI security, which is an emerging thing, because now that organizations are going up the maturity levels, I'm not sure if you're the RASA levels of conversational AI, if they're starting to go from like level 2 to 3, the need for trust and security interacting between humans and machines or machine to machine is really becoming a thing, which is a fascinating dilemma. And of course, that is a lot based on who's providing these machines, the TikTok effect, are the Chinese having all my data, and or the Americans.
Then again, it starts like for one organization to see whether or not there's opportunities for them with artificial intelligence. It starts with building capabilities to be able to assess that. And so it starts with building a skill set. It starts with more data-driven working, which is all digital, right? Coming back to our conversation about what is digital. And then if you're on par with in terms of that skill set and mindset, then you're probably much more able to see whether or not certain technologies such as artificial intelligence are interesting for you, if you need to build it yourself or not, or if you're going to set rules and regulations, etc. And in a few years from now, we'll be talking about different technology, and then the same skills are or different ones in outlook. Yes.
And we've got just a bit of time left, but what I'd like to do is connect that need to invest in capability to the purpose of organizations, because that's something I know that you're passionate about, as am I. As purpose-driven strategy. Why that's even a thing, I don't know, because why is it not all driven by purpose? But can you say a few words about your vision on that? Because as opposed, I think the opposite is doing technology stuff for the sake of technology, sort of hobbyism playing versus purpose-driven, disciplined, directed, focused work. Yeah.
I'd like to take the Port of Rotterdam as an example, because within their strategy, they've explained that actually two things are important. One is energy transition, and second is digital or digitization. And they, as a port, find it important to be a big contributor to energy transition in the Netherlands or even worldwide. And they make that happen through digitalization. So they start building, for example, data platforms on which all stakeholders, so lots of the whole ecosystem working together in the port of Rotterdam and outside of the port, they can tap into that, they can share data, they can use data to make it the whole process or different processes run more efficiently and effectively. And by doing that, they all save carbon dioxide, for example. So they use technology and new opportunities with technology to make that energy transition work for them. And I think that's important because right now, more and more talent, more and more employees, but also consumers are asking from companies that they buy from or that they work for to have a positive societal value, positive impact on society, and not only to just be profitable. And you see this happening also and speeding up, I think, through Corona times. And those companies who for example, started innovating their business model and started, making mouth caps or hand sanitizers or anything. So just to be of value to society, I think that those are the ones that have had a positive influence or have had a positive radiance probably on potential consumers and their own customers. And so this need for this, we have an expectation that companies should be profitable only by living their purpose, and not just profitable at cost of society. Yeah. And digital is a way to help that realize goals regarding that purpose. And I also think, and that's the last thing I say about it because I know we're running out, is that this is also a very powerful argument to help people and employees embrace technology. Because now they're not just doing this for, because they will have to work with robots in the future. No, they're doing this to help the company that they work for, their employer, reach their purpose. And I think that's a very powerful one to use. And I absolutely believe, and I've seen, and looking at myself, it's so much more inspirational and motivating to work for a common purpose as opposed to quote unquote only revenue. And I like to see profit or revenue as a result. It's definitely necessary for sustainability of an organization, but I think you're right. If it's the primary and perhaps only goal, then decisions can be odd, and maybe you're sacrificing some other things. So, wow. So, if you are a purpose-driven organization of various sizes and shapes, or would you like to be? And if you want to start your digital discussion and digital journey, then you can get in touch with Marelle at digitalshapers.nl, and you can also find her on LinkedIn, of course. And on the show notes, I will put a link to her think tank paper and the podcast that they had me as a guest on. Outstanding. So Marelle, thank you so much for this. It was a joy talking to you and learning from you, as I always do. Thank you so much. Thank you as well for this invitation, Chris. And happy to answer any questions that come from this conversation. Great, thanks.
Learn more at ebullient.com/podcast.